Hey guys, it's Mario here, and in this quick video I decided to clear up some things related to the intermittent fasting eating window. And these are questions that I've been getting not just recently since IF became more popular, but ever since 2010 when I first started doing intermittent fasting, the LeanGains approach, 16-hour fast, 8-hour eating window. I began getting different questions about how do you set up that eating window. So what do you do when you're training, let's say in the morning? How do you set up the eating window? What do you do if you're training in the evening? What do you do if you're training at mid-afternoon? How do you set that up? And there's really no right answer, but there's also no wrong answer. And it really comes down at the end of the day to what you're comfortable with and to what you can be consistent with. Because consistency with meals and having a consistent meal pattern is literally the only thing that you should be concerned with a little bit. And I'm saying a little bit because I'm going to tell you guys what really matters, because that consistent meal pattern can actually influence how hungry you are. So if you are someone who is constantly changing, let's say doing night shift and morning shift work, and I have a couple of clients right now who are doing that, we want to make sure that we set up an eating window where they can exactly stick to the same meal times as much as possible throughout the week, because those meal times will be linked to the circadian rhythm and there will be a link to ghrelin secretion, and that might allow them to stick to calories and macros more efficiently because they will not be hungry as much outside of those meals. Because if you've been doing 6-7 meals a day, you would have noticed when you switched to, let's say, that lower meal frequency, let's say 2 to 4 meals, is that you were hungry in those first couple of weeks of adaptation when you were trained to be hungry. So your body gets literally trained to expect food at certain times of the day. So changing the meal frequency and the pattern at which you have those meals is probably not a good idea. So consistency with meals is, I would say, the primary concern when we're dealing with the eating window. The second concern could be your placement of the workout. So whenever you can do the workout, that would be the priority, of course, to see at your lifestyle and when you can do that workout consistently. And with the workout, it's kind of similar, right? You want to train your kind of biorhythm and placement of that workout to be at the same time every single time you're supposed to work out. And if that's in the morning, that's fine. You will get adapted to train in the morning. And if that's in the evening, you will get adapted to train in the evening. And oftentimes when, let's use here an example of myself, I'm used to training in the early evening, and if I'm forced to train in the morning, let's say I'm going to have a very busy day, for some reason I won't be able to get that evening, I will have a very bad workout. I will typically experience less strength. I will have a very hard time warming up because I'm not used to that. And due to biorhythm reasons, my workout will suffer. My performance in the gym will suffer. But when I was training just in the morning, first time after waking up, I had no problems with that because I adjusted over time. It took me a couple of weeks, but after I've adjusted, it was completely fine. So setting an eating window that would open somewhat after that workout is probably a good idea if you're training first thing in the morning. So let's say about an hour and a half, 2 hours after the workout would probably be a good idea to get some protein in with a decent sized meal, get some carbohydrate in, and get the day started. So let's say you're training at the 8 in the morning, let's say an hour and a half workout, you'd probably want to get a meal around 11 and then close that window off at about 7 or 8 in the night. And you can notice here that I'm talking about 7, 8. I'm not talking about 7, and if it's 7 in 1 minute, you should shoot yourself because now you passed the window for 1 minute. These are not strict rules, guys. There's no research out there that said if you do 8 hours, you're good. If you do 8 hours and 5 minutes, you suck, your life ends, you're destroying all the benefits from fasting. That is absolutely not correct. So be very flexible with this. It doesn't necessarily matter if you do 8 hours one day, push it a little bit at 8.5 hours, 9 hours one day, 10 hours some days, sometimes even 12 hours if it happens to be. There's almost no difference whatsoever. Let me put things into perspective, right? So if calories and macros, we know that calories and macros are the things that matter the most. So daily calories and macros. And for fat loss, you could even say weekly calorie intake because you can vary the calories between the days, and what you get in a weekly basis, that's the most important. And then the macros, how much protein you're getting. That's the most important factor. You want to be about 1 gram per pound in protein, about let's say 2.2 grams per kilo if you're doing kilos. And then you want to distribute carbs and fats, probably a little bit higher carbs, moderate carbs if you're doing weight training and an aerobic training. So Let's say you set that up. How much importance that? Well, imagine the moon. Okay, imagine something in the size of the whole moon, and compare that to how big your eating window is, and in general, when your eating window is. So this is how much of difference would that make. So check this little thing here. That's how much difference does this make. So calories and macros are the moon. This is if your eating window is, let's say, pushed from 8 to 10 hours. This is it. That's how much of impact and magnitude this has on your results. So practically zero. You will not notice it in this lifetime, even if there were some benefits. So we're not even sure if there are any. So think about that for a second. We know for sure, we know for a fact that calories are what matters the most. And we know this from looking at all types of diets. This is not just when it comes to the vegan diet, this is not just when it comes to paleo or ketogenic. We know that if you restrict calories, you're gonna lose weight. We know that if you add more calories than you're spending, you're gonna gain weight. We know that this is a very simplified way of looking at things. Obviously, there's metabolic differences between people. Some people will adapt to a caloric deficit much more, and they will slow down their metabolism, specifically non-exercise activities such as your fidgeting, your moving around, your general metabolism might drop a little bit. There are, of course, differences in terms of how much food you eat. Thermic effective food will be different. That's the amount of energy your body spends to metabolize that food and just to digest it. But again, if we're looking at the big things like calories, macros, and the quality of food, of course, matters for consistency, because it's a lot easier to stick to a caloric deficit if you're getting high quality nutritious foods, plenty of lean protein, fruits and vegetables. And that's where intermittent fasting can help, is with that consistency, because some people find it a lot easier to stay consistent with their macros and calories if they're doing intermittent fasting. Is there any fat loss difference between people who eat the same calories every single day in 4 to 5 meals in a 12-hour window versus someone who is eating the same calories and meals with an 8-hour window? There's absolutely no research out there to point out that this makes any difference whatsoever. Any difference. So zero, nada, right? Zero, right? So that's important to keep in mind. And if there is some benefit, right, of this restriction of calories in an eating window, so far from the research, we haven't had controlled studies to actually show that these benefits come from intermittent fasting. We're not sure if that's the case for intermittent fasting, or that the caloric restriction itself gave these benefits. And I know that I went on a tangent a little bit here, and I know that made this video a little bit longer than it's necessary, but it's important to understand these things, right? We don't even know the difference whether that autophagy benefit comes from a caloric restriction or whether it comes from intermittent fasting. And autophagy is one of those things where intermittent fasting gurus will tell you, hey, that's the best benefit you can get. And generally, why we don't know this is because it's almost impossible to accurately measure weight loss in individuals and at the same time measure their caloric intake, because a lot of studies use self-reported intake, and which can be all over the place. We know that people report intakes of 50% less just because they want to feel good about themselves. They don't want to tell the researcher, hey, I had that Ben and Jerry's at the middle of the night last week, and it was a weekend, I felt sad, and my boyfriend broke up with me or something like that. The self-reported intake is all over the place, and we know that. People underreport exercise, they completely underreport their calories, and that's just the way it is. So that's the reality of things. So we don't even know whether intermittent fasting itself has any other benefits for health except the fact that it allows you to stay in that caloric deficit. Because let's face it, some people will naturally have a harder time consuming a lot of calories if they have this structure where the eating window is set up in a specific part of the day. Again, I know this is a tangent, and I apologize a little bit to you guys, but I just wanted to point this out because, again, we don't want to lose the sight of the main things, which is the daily calorie intake, how much protein you're getting, at least for body composition. Just for health reasons, you can get away with just eating the minimum amount of protein. If you restrict your calories, you're going to be fine. And then again, meal timing itself, meal frequency, has no effect on body fat loss. It's simply a matter of personal preference, whether you can stick to a diet and to your calories and macros with less meals or more meals, whatever is your personal preference. And high quality food, I would put it very high because I do care a lot about health benefits and consuming less of hyperpalatable foods will allow you to stick to a calorie deficit a lot easier and will allow you to get the appropriate nutrition that your body needs to be healthy. So limiting somewhat saturated fat intake to a degree where it's kind of a moderate intake, so you're not just stuffing your face all day with Pop-Tarts and ice cream, but you have some moderation, kind of minimizing trans fats and really focusing on healthy food choices with plenty of fruits and vegetables. I'm kind of repeating myself here, but it's necessary to point this out. So again, eating window, whatever you can consistently stick to, that is the absolutely most important point. Remember this compared to the moon in terms of magnitude of impact on your results. Moon is calories and macros on a daily basis, and basically sticking to that, whether intermittent fasting helps or not with that, that's cool. This is how much difference does it make whether you do the eating window 8 or 10 hours or 6 hours for that matter. Not much of a difference. So pick whatever you can stick to. Hope you guys enjoyed. It's a little bit of a longer video than I expected. Aside from that, let me know in the comments below, what are your thoughts on the eating window? When do you have your eating window planned out? And aside from that, make sure to hit that subscribe button below and support the channel to get some more new community members in the community here that we have on YouTube. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.